Hello, everybody. Welcome to No Scrubs, brought to you by the great folks at Check.com and, of course, the fabulous people here at Fistful of Talent. No Scrubs, we're the only show that talks about everything pre-hire to ensure that you make no bad hires. So let's get to it. I am thrilled about our guest today. She is my compadre. She's my HR pal. It's Robin Schooling. Robin, how are you?
Hey, Dawn. Doing good, doing good. So glad to be here
I'm
talking HR.
I know, thank you. I know it's always really exciting to get up in the morning and talk about what we're going to talk about today, which is reference checking. Yes, yes,
Yeah.
yes. That some might call a necessary evil, but we're going to talk a little bit more on the necessities of reference checking. But before we do that, Robin, tell everybody right now what's going on in your world. Tell everybody what you've been doing and what you're doing now.
Well, I worked in the trench HR, as we call it, for 20 plus years. And oh,
See, it
see,
never stops. HR work never stops.
that's right. And variety of industries, gaming, banking, manufacturing, healthcare. And for the last about year and a half, I've been running my own business, serving as an HR expert consultant. I consult with organizations, primarily small, mid-sized businesses, and also advise and work and coach and counsel and support HR teams. And my focus is making organizations better by making HR better.
Very good. Excellent. And it must be noted that Robin is in Louisiana, in Baton Rouge. So tell me,
Yep.
sister, were you enjoying the Mardi Gras a few weeks ago?
Definitely it was. It's always a fun season. We do some parading here in Baton Rouge, and we ended up actually this year not even going down to New Orleans for Mardi Gras Day because it was just bitterly cold and rainy and promised to kind of be a nasty day. So we hunkered in Baton Rouge and Mardi Gras here.
Very good. You had your own parade and you threw moon pies at yourself, right?
Yes, actually.
Okay, very good. All right. Well, Robin, let's talk about the topic of the day. Today we're talking about reference checks. And for the good folks that are listening in, you need to know that last week at Fistful of Talent, we did have a post that ran that was called The Unholy Trinity of HR Reference Checking. And essentially, it just talked a little bit about this enigma that is reference checking. And in this post, Robin, there people are probably wondering, well, what makes reference checks unholy? And certainly, what's the Trinity? And I think people who are a part of the HR world will relate to this. Reference checking, there's three things that I find with reference checks that are very difficult. Number one is this concept of the references are always biased. In my experience, and let me know if you agree with this or not, Robin, a lot of times a candidate is not going to, actually, never will a candidate give you any kind of reference where the person's going to say something bad about them.
Right.
Right? All right.
Absolutely.
So references are biased, and I don't blame them. Number two, corporate HR policies. A vast majority of HR policies will not allow for employees to give references on past employees. Has that been
Right.
your experience as well?
Yeah, absolutely. And what always mystifies me about that is, in HR, we want to gather information from other organizations, and we sort of get upset when they won't release to us anything beyond, name, rank, and serial number. But yet we turn around and enact that same policy in our organizations, and so
Yes.
it becomes this just whirling cesspool of ineffectiveness, kind of across
Right.
the whole spectrum.
Absolutely. Agreed. And then the third part of the unholy trinity is indifferent managers.
Yeah.
So a lot of the times, managers at the end of the day really, in some cases, don't care if the reference check is bad.
Right.
So that's the three things that make them unholy. So talk to us now, Robin. How long were you at the Louisiana Lottery?
I was there just under 7 years.
7 years. Now,
Hmm.
correct me if I'm wrong. I probably am wrong, but there's a part of me that always feels if you work for the lottery, I guess because the output is so much money. Do you guys
Hmm.
have to go through a different set of screening or reference checking? Is there any kind of fiduciary things that you have to look for when you're with team members or employees? Talk to me a little bit about that.
Yeah, it was a very interesting environment, and we were because each state is set up different. So we were quasi-governmental. We were not state employees. We were not a state agency. We were set up as a corporation. However, there was still a state statute that mandated certain things that we followed from an operational standpoint. One of those was the need to conduct background checks.
Okay.
And there actually was language in the statute of you cannot hire someone who has been convicted of a crime of moral turpitude, which is
Wow.
always an interesting sort of phrase that most lawyers can't even define. But we were required by statute to do more of an extensive background check process, not so much the reference check process, which we did anyway. But from a background aspect, everyone, of course, there were criminal background checks and driving checks and that. But for certain positions, director level and above, and everybody who worked in security had to go through an extensive state police background check.
Okay.
So we had to fill out a multi-page form accounting for every minute of the last 10 years of our lives. And the state police ran that check. And to the point where they would, because we would get our reports then. So as an employee, I got my report when it was done. They talked to our neighbors. They managed to get very good reference checks from former employers, former bosses. It was interesting to read what my former CEO had, said about me.
All right, so let's focus on the reference checks point of view at this juncture, Robin. So, do you think that the reference checks, in your experience with all of the years of HR you have, do you think that they're a necessity, or do you think they're just a big nuisance?
I firmly believe that they are a necessity. I think, unfortunately, we view them as a nuisance. Kind of back to the whole unholy trinity piece, why we do that. But sometimes it becomes we view it as a nuisance because it's often the last step. It's, oh my God, we just have this final hurdle to get through. We've vetted this candidate, we've put them through multiple interviews, we've made the hiring decision, and now we have to go and check references. And so HR folks, if they're tasked with doing that, view it as a pain in the ass. It's the last thing we need to do. We need to go through this. Oh my God, I'm going to be playing phone tag, for a week to try to get something on this candidate, and so we dread it,
Right.
and we do view it as a nuisance. But it really is a necessity, and I think great HR pros, great recruiters, will have built up a network usually of peers, especially within their industries or their geography. You've done it, I've done it, we all do it. Do we necessarily tell people we do it? No. We contact our peer network at, I talked to the HR colleague I know at ABC Company to get a little insight.
All right. So I think what's interesting here is, first of all, I agree with you. I think that reference checks are an absolute, in theory, they're absolutely necessary. Why on earth would you engage in what we would call like a employment marriage, somebody we want to stay with us forever, and not go through that last hurdle? Agreed. Right. So when people tell me they think reference checks are absolutely not necessary, I kind of look at them like, are you nuts? However, what you've just said is true. I think what you've just stated is something interesting. One of the reasons why I think managers and HR get so indifferent to it is because you're right. I never thought about this, Robin. The timing of the reference check might be in the wrong spot. If you've gone through 4 interviews and 2 months worth of some sort of process, and maybe they've done some homework, and maybe they've come in and done a test for you, at that point you already know you want them. So it's like, at that point you almost don't want to go through that last hurdle, because sometimes people don't even want to know what the problem is, right? All right, very good. So we're
I think there's a little trepidation associated with that too. If I'm the HR practitioner who's been part of that interviewing process, and I've promoted this candidate, from the get-go, and then the hiring manager got on board and multiple people got on board, we kind of get a little scared. Oh my God, what if we go through this reference check and this guy is not what we thought he was going to be? Is that going to look bad on me because I, as the HR pro, the recruiter, didn't pick up on it?
Yes.
Will that backfire?
Sure.
So I think that's an element of it too.
Yeah, the human element always completely takes our best intentions and just turns them this way. Correct.
Yeah.
So what do you think is the biggest blocker of HR pros getting good references?
I think, I think sometimes it's because we approach it as this task, as this checklist we need to do. Many of us, have inherited. Often we walk into an organization, this little checklist of 6 questions we're going to ask. So we don't stop to rethink what's the information we're trying to gather. So I think sometimes we need to kind of upend the questions we ask. Don't ask the same thing that everybody else is asking when doing a reference. The reference giver will know that. I think another hurdle is the fact that we continue to own it in HR. I think we can overcome some of these problems if we allow our hiring managers to be part of that process, and certainly train them and coach them and work with them on how to do it. But I've found it very effective when my director of nursing is contacting the director of nursing at another facility to do that reference check, or the VP of sales is talking to their peer, the VP of sales at another organization. I think that can assist us. We can let go of it in HR to some degree and work better with our hiring managers.
Yeah, well, I think that is an in some ways, it's such a radical thing to say, yet it's so deceptively simple. There's nothing that says that HR should have to own this process.
Right.
So I definitely think it's something that when you're doing kind of your, when you get a job requisition and you're meeting with your hiring manager, I definitely think that should be something that should be discussed. I think there's some hiring managers would prefer to do it. They would like to know a little bit more about what's happening and what's going on. And so why not let it go? I think a lot of the times when we talk about what's the most difficult obstacle in HR folks getting good reference checks, I think number one, it is certainly HR policies of most companies that they make it difficult. But another thing too is I think, as you've alluded to, HR pros, we kind of get negativity in our heads about the whole process at some point. We get in our own heads like, why am I even doing this? The manager's not going to care anyway. I'm going to call people just to kind of go through the notions and check the checkbox off that I did it. And so I think they become their own worst enemies as well. So I think we can change that conversation. We can change that perception, get the hiring manager involved. You might have a different outcome for sure. Excellent.
Yeah.
So any other tips that you can give to folks, HR pros out there who, we agree reference checks must happen. But any other tips you can give folks on how to make it more effective, more easy?
I mean, I certainly, and I've used third-party firms in organizations, and I've also, I've outsourced it. I've also kept it in-house. I've gone both ways. I think if it works within your organization, using a third party to assist with the process can help. Often that comes with volume and the need to do that and to just sort of take that pain, that nuisance off your desk. It may trigger some, more, FCRA requirements and all that sort of thing, but that's okay. Because sometimes those third parties reference checking entities can get a little more information from Joe applicant's former manager than I can as the HR lady calling in. So, that's certainly helpful. I've seen that work in organizations. Again, it depends on the organization.
Right.
Are you really relationship and, it's within one community? You may not need that third party, but volume absolutely helps.
Yes.
I got one the other day, actually, from a third party, that had been contracted, called me to gather reference information on someone that I had previously worked with who, had given them my name. So,
sure. So there you go. So I think when we talk about some tips, I agree with you. Really, you have to know what's the culture of your company, the type of work that's being done. You'll know pretty quickly, do you have a company culture and where reference checks are very, very, the the outcome of the reference check absolutely will dictate whether a person will be hired or not, or
Right.
do you have a company where it's a little more lax? All right, and we say
Right.
that with a lot of disclaimers attached to it, right? I
Right.
think if you're working for a company where it's a little bit more indifferent, then I think then it's really about saving time. I think let either other people outside of your department handle it. You know, you've got smart people outside of HR that can go through the legal, the proper ways of doing a reference checks. Let them do it. Save your HR function
Right.
the time of doing
Yep.
it. Or get a third party, like you said.
Yeah.
Third parties are
Yeah.
great, and there's definitely technology plays out there that will actually make the process easier for the person who's being asked for the reference as well. So I think that would be the channel
Yep.
to go if your company's a little more indifferent to it. If you've got a company where it is absolutely critical, let's say you're in healthcare, for instance, or like you said, in gaming industry, et cetera, I think at that point, then you've got to teach your people doing the reference checks to act like recruiters. They got to act like passive recruiters. If we're able to find that needle in a stack of needles through passive, recruiting and sourcing, then you can't tell me you can't get through the HR gatekeeper.
Right.
I don't believe it. See, I'm looking directly in the camera. I don't believe
Yep.
you. So, so I think we are on point with all of these things, Robin Schooling. So, Robin, thank you so much for bringing some great insight to a topic that some people find, it might not be a rock and roll sexy topic, but a very, very important topic. So thank you for bringing sexy back to reference checking.
Hey, I'm all about sexy HR. You know that.
So Robin, tell the good folks what you're up to next. You going to be anywhere where people can see you, meet you, shake your hand?
I do have a couple of things coming up. This week I'm going to Austin to the TalentNet conference. So that's the most immediate thing. And then in a couple of months, the next event I'll be at is the SHRM annual conference in Vegas. I'll be speaking on the Smart stage and doing some blogging and general, merriment, fun, and HR extracurricular activities.
All right, very good. I will see you in Las Vegas as well. I will be blogging with Miss Robin too. All right, Robin, thank you so much. And all you good folks out there, thank you for watching No Scrubs. Until next time, no bad hires.